We will now give the floor to Mr. Paolo Zambianchi, who will give us his view on the subject on how to motivate people to work for each other and how this improves also the agency sustainability. Mr. Paolo Zambianchi has 23 years of experience in construction, oil and gas and industry sector, acting during these years as a trainer, safety officer and safety specialist. He's active in article and book writing and taking part in committees in Italian, working at height uni standards and Italian training guidelines, promoting health and safety way of living. As an ambassador of an Italian safety culture movement and as a self-development trainer. Dear friend Sambarcini, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to share my screen as well, because I want to let you not only see graphs, facts and figures, but also the faces of the characters, of the people, about the story I'm going to share with you. So I will share my screen so you can see directly in faces the people involved. Okay, perfect. So how to face challenges in HNC. Last year, I closed my speech with this quote: "A society grows great when old men plant trees in whose shade they shall never sit in." Now I want to restart from there. Today I'm here to tell you something about a society, a community, and the lesson we can learn from it. If you love the idea of creating a society, or better, a company, in which people are inspired and supported by each other, with shared beliefs and united for a common goal, even in difficulty moments, let me share with you this marvelous story, in which I think we can find a profound meaning. So, these are the faces of our characters. In the last 200 years, more than 6 million Italians emigrated in the United States, half of them, as well as 3 million, in just 30 years, from 1890 to 1920, what will go down in history as the mass migration. It's a story that cinema has often repeated, with not always positive tones for Italians. The truth, however, is that most of them came from poor places, from mountain communities where there was no perspective, no job, or even no food. And the only chance was try to find something better elsewhere, even though this meant leaving their native land, their roots, and above all, their families and traditions. On the other side of the ocean, manpower was required. In particular, in Pennsylvania, not far from New York, there was an area called the mining belt, where men were needed to mine coal and slate. So in 1882, 10 men and 1 boy decided to leave their land. They left their native city of Roseto Effect in the south of Italy, near Foggia, close to the Adriatic Sea, to seek future and fortune in America. They sailed, embarking on third class, taking the long crossing, and probably was one of them, the first to shout, "America!" when finally they arrived in New York after 12 days. After the difficult procedure to enter the country, they traveled another 300 miles. They reached Bangor in the core of the mining belt, where they found the job but not the place to sleep. They had to get by. The Welsh and the German that were already there didn't see them in a good way. And also, furthermore, they cannot speak English. They didn't know how to speak English. So it was not difficult for them to team up and to stay together day and night. They began to build houses, first made with wood, then with bricks and cement, but nevertheless, they missed Italy. They missed their families too. their tradition, their food, their religion, in one word, their culture. They immediately knew that if they wanted to survive in the US, they need to keep their culture alive. In a short time, they began to write letters and letters to their parents, relatives, and friends, telling them that America can be a land of opportunity for them also, and they would be very happy to have the chance to be together again. And the first to arrive, the 10 men and 1 boy, also agreed to team up with other Italians who, like them, arrived there from other places of northern or southern Italy to seek a better future. So they founded a small town which decided to call Roseto. Its streets are called also nowadays Garibaldi Avenue, Marconi Avenue, Dante Streets, and so on. But in Roseto, life was hard because the work involved sacrifice and risks, inhaling dust from the coal or dying from landslides in the prairies. So every time they returned home safe and sound, there was a festive atmosphere also because their parents too arrived, and even their grandparents. Yes, because they decided to cross the ocean, to stay close to the dearest and nearest and live a better life. Now, let me introduce another important character of our story, Father Pasquale Denisco. He was the first permanent resident Catholic priest in Roseto, Pennsylvania, and in 1897, a few months after his arrival, he began to defend the workers' rights and organized the branch of the American Federation of Labor. Through the strike directed by him, the daily pay rose from $0.85 to $1.5. Father Denisco was a strong leader, not only a spiritual one, but really a leader that brings Roseto to another level, push Roseto into the future, let me say. He created the first association to teach Italians to read and write in English as well as in Italian. He committed himself and convinced Rosetans to transmit to their new generation those fundamental notion about Italian lives. He pushed the Rosetan to keep the Italian tradition alive, how to grow a garden, producing grape to make wine, or tomato to make salsa di pomodoro, tomato sauce, or breeding pigs to produce salami, ham, and so on. He pushed them to take care of the neighbor if they saw them in difficulty. The Rosetan were very religious, and they started to follow the words of this priest, who made them feel less alone. However, maintaining those traditions was not so easy, and they could not maintain by themselves with their own forces, let me say. So they started to help one another, who by collecting tomatoes to make sauce, who by killing the pigs to make salami, who was more skilled in norcineria, helps the others to create fantastic colored meat, who was skillful at manual works, tried to repair an old tractor. In short, everyone gave his effort to help others, receiving help as well from the others. Since there were no refrigerator at the moment, who helped this neighbor to kill the pig would receive in exchange part of the meat. In the same way, who received help to collect tomatoes will give tomato sauce to his helper. So they lived every free moment together, trying to keep their culture alive by remembering their beloved Italy. Furthermore, every time they had worked together, they took the opportunity to rest and to dine together, maybe preparing something special from their place of origin. For example, pasta alla carbonara, or if you are Sicilian, cannoli. They also decided to establish special events to celebrate together the tradition of Italian cuisine, dance Italian dances, and singing Italian songs. This new reality started from that 10 men and 1 boy in 1882, became normal life in Roseto between 1950 and 1960, let's say. And meanwhile, in the same period, Stuart Wolf, a physician and researcher, opened his medical labs in Bangor in 1961. His activities was mainly focused on cardiovascular diseases, which were the first case of death in the US and Western world. By chance, Stuart met Benjamin Falcone, who was exercising as the local doctor in Roseto. Falcone told him then of 1,200 inhabitants of Roseto, the cases of cardiovascular diseases were very few. Falcone reported that in the last 8 years, there had not been any heart attack, and gave some evidence to Wolf. Nevertheless, Wolf was not convinced and involved other medical doctors and the Pennsylvania Department of Health in order to check the real situation in Roseto. And what they discovered was unbelievable. Wolf formed a team to find the reason for these numbers. These are the numbers of Roseto between all the others. The research lasted 3 years and involved Rosetans, all coming from Italy in the last 80 years or born in the US of Italian parents, and inhabitants of the nearby cities of Bangor and Nazareth, mainly Welsh, German, Polish, and Dutch. Medical examination, data inspection, collection of evidence. They made a lot of different things, even living together with the people and taking note of every single behavior. The determinants of health were also considered. During these 3 years, the researchers found out that the Rosetans did not practice any sports and habitually smoked. As regard to the diet, they almost used lard for cooking and drank much wine. Their conclusion was that definitely little healthy lifestyle of Rosetan should lead to coronary heart disease, which were almost absent instead. For a long time, no one seemed to understand what the secret was. Hypotheses relating to genetic factors were discharged, since the researchers showed that Rosetans who had moved elsewhere died of heart disease with the same frequency as other Americans. The environmental factors were obviously excluded, since there is only one road that divides Bangor from Roseto. In brief, all the assumptions were reviewed and no valid reason was identified until they understood that there were some elements which made the Roseto unique and different from all the other Italians, immigrants living in part of the US, as well as the American, as well as many other people in other countries. That was part of their research. They wrote the Rosetan had common history and ancestry, and by remaining cohesive, they kept them alive. There was a great commitment to mutual support and involvement in social affairs of the community. In many associations in 1962, in Roseto, 22 different organizations were operating with a population of 1,200 people. There were more than individuals, more than just a group of people. There were a society with strong common belief, with a huge sense of duty. The Rosetans were focused on helping each other, protecting each other, to build a better future for their growing Italian-American children. There were many moments to be together. Every Rosetan knew he could rely on the other when in difficulty or need. If someone had a personal or family problem, he always knew who to trust with or who to ask for help, psychological or material. No one was left alone in Roseto. No Rosetan worked too much, since they worked on as much as way to live. They did not felt the need to build a larger house or buy better cars. Okay, and they worked just for a quiet living, and the rest of the time was dedicated to the community by engaging in voluntary activities. For them, the most important thing was to remain united, to be able to create a network of peers functioning as support, as a safety net, ready to welcome those who feel in difficulty with the certainty that they can count on it. They use their time to help fellow men to understand how good it is to feel useful, how much it rewards to dedicate one's time to someone else, how exciting is to give love to the others. Now let me just read you the exact words from the report of John Brun and Stuart Wolf. The Roseto that we saw was sustained by traditional values of southern Italian villages. The family, not the individual, was the unit of their society. The community was their base of operations, and each inhabitant felt the responsibility for its welfare and quality. Most households contained 3 generations. Rosetans were proud and happy, generous, hospitable, and ready to celebrate any small triumph for their citizens. The elderly were not only cherished, but instead of being retired from family and community responsibility, they were promoted to the Supreme Court. There was no shortage of stress among Rosetans. They experienced many of the same social problems and personal conflict as their neighbors, but they had a philosophy of cohesion with powerful support from family and neighbor and deep religious conviction to shield them against and to counteract the stress. The report closes with a prediction. Should the inhabitants of Roseto abandon their traditional values and behavior, they would lose their relative immunity from fatal myocardial infection. And unfortunately, so it happened. 20 years later, a new research and many others after that showed that the prediction became reality. When the Rosetans diverted their focus from being a society, they began to experience dramatic increase in cardiovascular disease. And since then, a lot of studies have begun to focus on so-called Roseto Effect. Also, the research tools, the secret of living a long life, let's call it like this, also called blue zones, show that there is a strong connection with the Roseto Effect, because part of the reason why people live longer are the family and social commitment, how you can see in this graph. So what's the lesson we can learn from this event? How we can create the Roseto Effect within our society, our community, or our company. Let's go back to this table. We can change this into how to create Roseto Effect. Instead of talking about common history and ancestry, we can call it shared vision or shared goals. Instead of talking about just Italian tradition, Italian diet, and so on, we can call it common beliefs and values. Instead of talking about social affair community, we can talk about strong team working orientation. Instead of talking about the involvement of people, we can talk about the involvement of employee. Instead of the support from each other, we can talk about mutual support from peers. And what about the roles? We are talking about 60. There was a male-centered role, but we can talk about clear roles. And what about stress? A strong stress management, even during crisis. The question is, are you doing the best you can?
2 minutes left, please.
Yes. But why do I need to take care about feeling and emotion of other people, the feeling and emotion of my colleagues? Because the limbic part of our brain, which is responsible for decision-making, is strongly connected with emotion and feelings. That's why sometimes, even if we know from facts and figures that we need to do something, we don't feel like this is the right decision. So, absolutely, we need to take care of feelings and the emotion of our people. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Now, please think about yourself. Think about your life. Have you ever felt the Roseto Effect? There was in any time in your working or private life a time when you felt supported by other people? There was? How did you feel? How did you feel? And there was been any moment in your life when you supported someone else? How did you feel? Some of the best qualities that a person can have does not exist not in relation to the others. Kindness, being funny, generosity are qualities that not exist. Only in relation to the others can exist. I cannot be kind, funny, or generous toward myself. We need other people. Happiness is amazing. It's so amazing, it doesn't matter if it's yours or not. Especially during the COVID pandemic, I did feel the Roseto Effect, thanks to my neighbor and my colleagues. It has been a tough period for everyone, but those who had the opportunity to help and receive help from others live it differently, and I think in a slightly better way. So if you want to feel the Roseto Effect, don't lose the opportunity of creating and reinforcing your social relation by devoting your time, energy, and passion to help others. Also, or especially, because I think you spend most of your time there in your workplace. I want to say thank you to Alessandro Spiridonis, who involved me in this event last year, to Georgios Panopoulos and Nizza Silva, who asked me to be there again, to Georgios as well, to my company that allowed me to participate, but let me especially say thank you to Michele and Maria Grazia, that are my dear colleagues who are part of my work in Roseto Effect, and also to Alessandra, who helped me so much reviewing this speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zampianchi, for the beautiful presentation, the beautiful old pictures from the past, and the different approach on the behavior of the people and their health, how their health is affected. It's clearly that when we investigate in depth, we can find the causes of the problem, and then we will find, of course, the solution and the way to solve the problems and improve our environmental workplace. Thank you very much. Let's now move to the last but not least